Guys, this is fucking awesome. We are playing on Thursday Night Football against the team in our division that's up there with us. For everyone to fucking see. If you don't have fucking goosebumps and you're not ready to go, I know this room is. I cannot fucking wait. If we would have told you this when you were 10 years old, we would have told you this at the beginning of the year. Hey, on Thursday Night Football, all the fucking chips are on the line right here. I got goosebumps thinking about that. I cannot fucking wait. Lock the in. Laser focus. So we can be at our best on Thursday night.
We welcome you to the Eagles pregame show brought to you by SeatGeek, and we have a big one for you tonight. Thursday Night Football, Eagles at 7-2, Washington Commanders 7-3. When was the last time we had a game against Washington that really meant anything for the Eagles? Well, we're getting one tonight on Thursday Night Football at Lincoln Financial Field. Jason Kelsey at a concert pregame. Yeah, you heard that right. What's the thing? Oh no, Reed Blankenship and Cooper DeJean walked in wearing matching, exciting white t-shirts. All the vibes are going for the Birds tonight, and it's the biggest game of the year so far. Ben Goldstein, Sam Heine. Sam, how we doing?
Doing great. Super excited. I mean, it's not very often that you get a prime time football game, this late into the season that can really put you over the top for a division lead. Whatever team that wins this game today is going to have the inside track, obviously, to win the NFC East. And for it to be on prime time is even more exciting. And yeah, I feel like we've been looking forward to this game for the last probably 2 weeks now. And for it to finally be here with both these teams sitting at 7-2 and 7-3. Ooh, it is going to be a really good one, and I'm really excited. I just can't wait for it to kick off.
Yeah, it is a big one tonight. Biggest game at Lincoln Financial Field, we were saying, since the 49ers game last year. And hopefully this one goes much better than that one did, because that one was not fun. Also, whoever wins this game will be first in the NFC East. This is week 11. So, this is very big for multiple reasons.
Yeah, and the way that the NFC is this year with a bunch of teams with some really good records, I think that even if either of these teams loses this game, I'm not going to say that either of them aren't going to miss the playoffs, but there are a lot of very good teams in the NFC, and with those 7 playoff spots, it does help whatever team loses and whatever team does not make the NFC East, crown here to get into the playoffs. But it's going to be a tight race for those wild card spots too, and it's crazy because these teams could be one game off of each other, and tonight could be the one where, the Eagles could potentially, if they win this game, get the 1 seed, and the Commanders have to go and play on a wild card weekend. Same thing the other way. Commanders, if they keep it going, they could be the 1 seed or the 2 seed, and the Eagles could be having to play on wild card weekend or not even make the playoffs at all. So this is just a huge, huge, huge game, and it is. It's looking like these two teams could be some of the teams that are looking to compete for the NFC title for years to come.
It sure does. They say waiting all night for Sunday night, or waiting all day for Sunday night. Well, we've been waiting all week. We've been waiting since Sunday night for Thursday night, and it's finally here. All right, this picture is from the Pat McAfee show. So shout out to them. These are some numbers for the Eagles: total offense, total defense, points allowed, and some numbers allowed throughout here. And these numbers are kind of similar, except the some of the defensive numbers are a little bit different. But two kind of similar teams when you look at the numbers, Sam.
Yeah, I think, if you look at these two teams on paper, obviously the Eagles have the more talented team. I heard Sheil Kapadia talk about on WIP this week that he doesn't know if there's, 3 players on Washington that would start for this Eagles team. But somehow, some way, they are playing extremely good football, and they are putting together, a great season so far. And when you look at the two teams, obviously here what these numbers are showing, the defense is the biggest thing that stands out. Washington's run defense is very, very bad. Eagles' run defense is great, obviously. But Washington's offense has been really good as well. They've put up 40 points against Arizona. They've had some really big games. So while the Eagles may be the more talented team on paper, that doesn't always win you football games. You have to actually go out there and play the game. So when you look at the stats, I mean, these teams are very, very close. They've played a lot of similar opponents, obviously, since they're in the same division. So you can look at those games as, kind of seeing how they did against each of those teams. And yeah, I mean, this is just about as close of a division race as you're going to get.
Sure is. We've seen a lot of these with Dallas over the past few years, but now it's Washington. And a big reason for Washington's success this year has been their second overall pick from LSU, Jaden Daniels. He won the Heisman last year. I mean, the guy, 68.7 completion percentage, 2,147 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 101.7 rating. Won the Heisman in his last year in college. Second overall pick. Has completely turned around this Commanders organization. They've been looking for a quarterback for years, and they finally got one. Is he really the big surprise that we're thinking about when you look at his, second overall pick, won the Heisman? Like, are these numbers super surprising to you? Should he have always been in the offensive rookie of the year race, or is this totally, completely out of the blue?
Well, yeah, it's hard to say that it's a major surprise at how well he's playing because he was the number 2 overall pick. And like you said, he was the Heisman Trophy winner last year. But when you look at coming out of the draft, it was very clear that everyone thought that Caleb Williams was the best quarterback coming out of this draft. It wasn't really a question on whether or not the Bears should have taken Jaden Daniels or not. And, while we still need to see Caleb Williams see out his time in Chicago, obviously, Jaden Daniels has had a better start to his career than he has. I mean, if you look at these numbers, like you said, his completion percentage in the beginning of the season was amazing. He was completing around like 80% of his passes. He can run, he can throw, he can do just about everything. I think one thing that's been big for him coming in to this season is that he is 23 years old. He did play at Arizona State before transferring to LSU, so he does have a little bit of an edge against some of these younger quarterbacks coming out. I mean, I remember Jalen coming out, and there was a big talk about how he was just 20 or 21 years old, and obviously Caleb Williams is on the way younger side, and Drake May and these other guys who came out this year who have definitely shown a lot of flashes, but they are 2 years behind Jaden Daniels in terms of just playing football. So while I think that obviously he has done an insanely good job of coming in here and stepping in right away, I think that just his experience and getting to play a little bit more in college definitely has helped him out. But when you look at, what he's done this year, obviously he got hurt a few weeks ago. He didn't miss any time, but he's kind of been playing a little bit worse since then. But at the beginning of the season, he set the league on fire. I mean, Ron Jaworski said on WIP this week that Jaden Daniels is the best rookie quarterback he has ever seen. While I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration and a little bit of being a prisoner of the moment, I mean, he is definitely having a fantastic season. You look at a guy like CJ Stroud last year who came out and had a great rookie year. So while he's going to have to continue to do it throughout his career and throughout the rest of the season, especially as they start to play some better teams, because just about any team that's decently good or you would say good, they've lost to. He's going to have to continue to grow, obviously, but for the first 9-10 weeks of this season, he has been fantastic, and it's definitely scary to get that kind of player into this division.
It sure is a little daunting, but you mentioned it. He has been playing a little bit down recently. These are the last 3 games for Washington. His last game only threw 50% of his passes were completions, no touchdowns, 68.5 rating. The yards were a little bit more down. You see that game against the Giants was pretty good, a pretty high rating. Yards not always there. And then that Chicago Bears, the yards, 326, crazy, but 55.3 is the completion percentage. And they lost that game to Pittsburgh by just 1 point. That Giants game, they barely beat New York in MetLife Stadium. So that one could have gone either way. Maybe not a crazy deserving win for Washington. And then, of course, that Bears game with the crazy Hail Mary at the end to beat Chicago. So, I mean, yeah, since his injury, Daniels has been down a little bit, but they are still winning games.
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing, and we'll talk about this a little bit later in terms of like keys to the game and stuff, but he is on the smaller side in terms of just his frame. He is not a very big guy. When you look at running quarterbacks, the kind of body frame that you would really want is Jalen Hurts. He's built, he's got very strong legs, he's got a very solid upper body. Eagles fans, if you haven't really seen a lot of Jaden Daniels, you'll see him tonight, obviously, and I think a lot of people will be surprised at just how frail he looks out there. And obviously he got hit and has that rib injury. So I think a big thing about getting to him is getting hits on him, because I do think a big worry for the Commanders is throughout a season and throughout his career, if he doesn't put on that weight. Obviously, he doesn't want to get too big, but if he does not put on a lot of weight, will he be able to sustain a full season of NFL hits and the amount of dropbacks he's taking, along with the amount of runs? Those add so many extra hits. So that's something to definitely watch for tonight's game and moving forward in his career. But yeah, I mean, the Commanders have had a lot of games that could have gone either way. Credit to them for winning the Bears game. They won the two Giants matchups. The first Giants matchup, the Giants didn't even have a kicker. If they had their kicker, they'd probably win that game. That's the Giants. And then obviously, like you said, there was a close game against the Giants the other week. So they're finding ways to win. Last week they didn't find a way to win. And sometimes those close games can kind of turn on you. I think we saw that a little bit last year with the Eagles. Everyone talks about the collapse. What not a lot of people talk about is that they were winning games so closely and by so many miracles. And, Jalen making a great run in overtime, or, something happening at the end of the game that eventually your luck's going to run out. So we might have seen a little bit of that last week when you just kind of play with fire a little bit too much. But yeah, I mean, they've been impressive so far this season, and it's going to be interesting to see how they finish it out.
Jaden Daniels, 6'4", 210, compared to what you said is the ideal size of Jalen Hurts, 6'1", 223.
Yeah, I mean, if you looking at him, obviously, I mean, that's been a thing with Lamar. Obviously Lamar has had injuries over the past few years, of his career. When he's been healthy, he's been an MVP and an MVP candidate. But then when he gets hurt, that derails their whole season, obviously. So it's definitely something that Washington's going to have to try to manage in the future, so you can put on a little bit more pounds. I think if you could put Jalen's weight on a Jaden Daniels height, you kind of have the perfect little mix there. But it's going to be it's definitely something to watch, and I think it's definitely a key to this game that we'll talk about later, that you need to get pressure on him and make sure he feels you early and often.
Speaking of Jalen Hurts, let's see what his performance last week. Well, it was interesting. You got the full Jalen Hurts experience. His first 13 dropbacks last week. He was sacked 5 times for 46 yards, threw an interception, which was not really his fault. Incredible pick by CeeDee Lamb. And he lost a fumble at the Cowboys' 6-yard line. But after that, when the sun went down and, the curtains weren't necessary anymore at AT&T Stadium, Hurts threw for 137 yards, 2 touchdowns, rushed for 2 more touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over, did not get sacked, and for the 5th straight game, finished with a passer rating of 115 or higher. You got everything from Jalen Hurts last week. I mean, it was like watching his rookie season and 2022 like in one game. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to disagree with you a little bit on the interception. I think, and I've heard a lot of people say this, and I agree with them, that he had Grant Calcaterra open on that play, and what he needed to do was either one, look off Trayvon Diggs and then throw the ball to Calcaterra, or throw the ball with a little bit more anticipation and get the ball out a little bit earlier. And he did have Goddard on the window. Obviously, like you did say, though, Trayvon Diggs made a great play, and sometimes you just have to tip your cap. But there are things that Jalen could have done a little bit better on that play. And yeah, I mean, this game last week is kind of my biggest fear for the Eagles season, honestly. One thing that we have seen from Jalen so far this season is that he starts the games really, really slow. I mean, there was the whole thing about the no scoring points in the first quarter. In the first half, they barely scored a lot of points. I mean, if you go back and look at these game logs of just kind of some of these halftime scores, a lot of these games are really, really close in the first half. And then for whatever reason, obviously they make great adjustments at halftime. Jalen comes out, he plays better in the second half in just about every one of the games, and we all leave feeling happy. But against better teams, you can't do that. Against a better team, you cannot turn the ball over 2 times in the first half. You cannot take 5 sacks in the first half, which, I've heard people I've heard people say that 4 of those sacks were just on Jalen holding the ball too long. When you have 4, 5, 6 seconds to throw the football, it needs to be out or you need to run. Whether they're throwing it out of bounds, throwing it to a receiver or finding a lane to run. I think, obviously he was holding onto the ball way too long, and he just has these stretches of play for extended periods of time that seem to come a lot of times in the first half where he just really struggles and the offense kind of sputters. The biggest turnaround that we've seen in terms of getting points in the first half have been turnovers. You look at the last couple of drives. The Eagles have only scored on one first drive of the season. On one first drive of the game this season. That was the field goal against the Bengals. Every other first drive of the season has ended in a punt or a turnover. But then the defense comes up and they've created turnovers the last couple of weeks. The special teams created a turnover that led to a touchdown, and then the defense created a turnover that led to a touchdown. So, that is definitely a big, big worry for me going into these games where we were playing better teams. Washington, the Rams, the Ravens, going into the playoffs against teams like the Detroit Lions. You cannot have a first half where you come out slow like that. It's happened way too many times this season, and it's definitely my biggest concern in terms of going deep into a deep run for this team. But then at the same time, he comes out in the second half and he plays amazing. It's incredible how he's able to just kind of flip the switch. I will say, while I will be very critical of Jalen's first half, my biggest thing that I love about Jalen Hurts is that he does not let things rattle him. So many quarterbacks, including the one that we used to have here, Carson Wentz, where if they turn the ball over 2 times in the first half, if they are not seeing the field well, whether you want to blame the sun, whether you want to blame the Cowboys for having a good defensive scheme, they let these things snowball on them. Jalen is so good at just forgetting it, moving on to the next play. And that is just such an incredible trait of his that I love about him, because he's able to just turn these games where he just plays so poorly in the first half and is able to just keep us in it. And we ended up, obviously at 7-2, he's had so many games where he's turned the ball over multiple times or has done this, done that. But at the end of the day, we're 7-2 because he's able to turn things around. I would love to see him play a full and complete game, but it's hard not to be encouraged by the fact that he's able to find these ways to win these games. And I think, obviously, like I said, that's such an incredible trait of his. And it's in there. That player that we all know and love is in there. And he does it for spurts and halves. And we need to start seeing him putting it together for a full game. And hopefully that can start tonight.
Hopefully. How can you kind of do that, though? Like, come out with that hot start? Do you have an extra Red Bull, an extra Bang energy drink to get you going in the first half? Have an extra smelling salt, or is it just something with them?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they've tried, a lot of different things. I think one thing is that sometimes they do get a little bit out of the running game in the beginning of the game, and then they kind of let Saquon work in. I do think also, some people just need to work their ways into games. You look at pitchers a lot where some guys aren't as sharp in the first inning as they're going to be in the fourth inning. Jalen just might not be as sharp as he is in the first quarter as he is in the third. Sometimes that happens with players where they need to work themselves in a game. You see a lot of guys in the NBA even who are not great in the first quarter. They come out a little slow, shooting's a little off, and then they get it going. Kind of that whole need to see one through mentality where you need to see a bucket go through and then you can kind of get it going. Maybe Jalen just needs to see a couple passes get completed, but I think obviously it goes into coaching as well because their first 15 play script has not been working well at all. But I think I don't know. It's something that they need to try to figure out because, like I said, when they start playing these better teams, including tonight, we need to be playing full and complete games and not just great halves. You can get away with playing Dallas Cowboys and Cooper Rush, very poorly in the first half and still win the game 34-6. But the Detroit Lions, Baltimore Ravens, Washington Commanders not going to be able to do that. So I don't know. They need to figure out what it is. Like I said, maybe he just is one of those guys who needs to kind of get things working a little bit before he gets into a full rhythm. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I think sometimes too he comes out in the second half. Obviously, there's halftime adjustments. Maybe these defenses are throwing out new things that he's not used to seeing, disguising coverages, all that kind of thing. And then they're able to figure it out and talk to him at halftime and kind of be able to get him a little bit more comfortable in that. But at the same time, it's got to get figured out.
What drink would you hand Jalen Hurts before he runs onto the field to start the game that would maybe give him a little bit of a boost? Are you giving him an alcoholic beverage or more of an energy drink?
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, Red Bull. I guess I've taken a Red Bull one time before a game before, and I was standing at center court about to do the tip, and my hand was shaking, and I said to myself, "Yep, I am never doing that again." So I don't know. I don't know if I want Jalen's hands shaking out there with the ball. He seems like he's a coffee guy, though.
Yeah, he does kind of come off maybe a little bit of some. He definitely is like drinks a little glass of tea at halftime or something. Maybe he gets the Red Bull and does the JoJo Romero coming out of the bullpen, slams it over his glove and talk. I don't know. Maybe we don't know what he does, but hopefully whatever he starts doing starts to work. Something that is working for the Eagles is A.J. Brown against the Washington Commanders. Last year in 2 games against Washington, he had 17 receptions for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had one crazy one I remember at the Link in October when the Eagles barely beat Washington and had to win with a game-winning field goal early in that season last year. But why does he hate Washington? Like, what? Does he not like the new name or something?
Well, I think the one thing is a little bit of motivation for him is Emmanuel Forbes, the Washington cornerback. He was a big talker last year. If you remember, he was kind of talking trash about AJ and Devontae, saying he's going to lock them up and all that kind of stuff. And then AJ kind of went off. I don't know. I mean, sometimes teams are just good matchups for players. I mean, Devontae Smith 2 years ago in 2022 was kind of the Washington killer. He had that huge game down there. Washington hasn't really had great cornerbacks recently, and I think AJ, he's just an amazing player. And for whatever reason, maybe it's like you said, maybe he doesn't like the Commander name. Maybe they did something to him when he was in Tennessee or something. Maybe they skipped over him in the draft. But whatever it is, it's been working. And with some of the injuries they got over there in the secondary, I expect another big game from him today because he's probably going to be going up against Forbes today. And, I do think, though, when teams or players start to talk trash, AJ is not really one talk trash back. He's going to show you how it is on the field. So I think that was kind of a little bit of an extra motivating factor for him last year.
Could have been also Jahan Dotson is playing his first game against Washington since he was traded away to the Eagles. I don't know. Maybe we'll see something from Jahan Dotson. He seems to be a little bit more involved recently.
Yeah, Jahan Dotson revenge game. I mean, he did have that great play last week. Him and Jalen seemed to really be on the page where they had the comebacker. He obviously had that amazing catch 2 weeks ago against Jacksonville. They need to get him more involved. Eventually teams are going to try to figure out how to stop this 3-headed monster of Saquon, AJ, and Devontae. And you always need some extra guys to step up here and there. We were just talking about beforehand, before we went live here, about how Quez Watkins lost us this Washington game 2 years ago. And, while Quez obviously was not a major part of this offense in terms of target share or anything, he really made his impact felt in a negative way because he wasn't there to make plays. You look back to the Super Bowl, that Washington game, a few other games come to mind. So as long as Dotson's catching the balls that come his way, I think it's going to be good. And I would like to see him get a little bit more involved just to try to keep the defense a little bit more honest on AJ and Smitty.
Yeah, Quez Watkins was a little too involved in the offense at times. But yeah, that game where the Eagles lost their first game of the season in 2022 on this day, another Thursday night game against Washington. Felt like a trap game going in, ended up being a trap game. I remember when we did our live stream, when the Eagles schedule originally came out, you said that this game tonight was going to be a trap game. No, it's actually ended up being the biggest game of the season.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it was sandwiched in between going out to Los Angeles on a Sunday night and Dallas, obviously in prime time on a Thursday night short week. This would have been an easy one for the Eagles to kind of look over. And we know Washington has kind of gotten us a few times in the past, like you said in 2022, but it's turned out to be, like you said, the most important, biggest game of the season so far. So in no way a trap game. It's crazy. That's why you can always look at the schedule before the season starts, and you can always predict games, but no one knows how teams are really going to be, and no one knows how seasons are really going to go.
That's true. And you mentioned that short week. If I can find the thing, where is it? All right, whatever. Eagles and Washington are both on a short week this week. Eagles, I mean, they may have a little bit more of a break than Washington does, just because the Eagles were in a blowout. They killed Dallas last week. Their starters rested the whole fourth quarter. Washington, on the other hand, played a tough game. They only lost by 1 to Pittsburgh. So the Eagles have a little bit of an upper hand and maybe, 30 minutes extra rest than Washington, who had to play a full game.
Yeah, one of my keys to the game last week was to get the Eagles starters out of the game as quickly as they could last week to get that extra rest. But I think Washington's game last week could kind of go both ways. Obviously it was a tough loss for them. They now are behind us in the division just because they do have 3 losses. So I think that could give them a little bit of an extra motivating factor this week. Not that they need any more motivation for this week, but I think if they kind of lost in just like blowout fashion or whatever, they might I would say the Eagles had the advantage, but I think the way Washington lost, they feel like they should be still leading this division at 8-2, coming in here with the Eagles trying to dethrone them. Instead, it's the other way around. So I think obviously they're already extremely motivated, and I think it's going to give that extra motivation. But I do think where they could benefit the Eagles is in the fourth quarter today. Saquon Barkley only touched the ball 15 times last week, or 16 times, one of the two. Obviously, Jalen got out of there extremely early. AJ Devontae, our offensive line, a lot of our guys on defense, so they should be a little bit fresher than Washington. Obviously, we know that the Eagles have done a great job of running the ball in the fourth quarter and kind of wearing teams down with the run, imposing their will on teams, and then kind of stuffing it down their throats. I believe Saquon Barkley is the NFL's leading rusher right now in the fourth quarter. So I think that could be a factor today, is that the Eagles might have a little bit fresher legs. And if they have a lead, they can kind of let Saquon go a little bit in the fourth. And hopefully Washington's still going to be feeling the effects of having to play a tight game on Sunday.
Another boost for the Eagles this week is Jordan Mailata is returning to the offensive line for the Eagles. He missed the last 4 weeks with a hamstring injury, and we need to quickly shout out how awesome Fred Johnson was in place of Jordan Mailata. Had the big game against Henderson of the Cincinnati Bengals, was big in all the other games he was a part of, and he was great.
Yeah, Fred did an amazing job. I mean, no one really knew who he was before the season. He was on the Eagles last couple of years, and he was always the guy that they kind of went to for the silly TikTok questions, but no one really knew who he was. And for him to step in and play as well as he did, especially against some of the best pass rushers in the league, I mean, it was just an amazing job by him. And it's really good to know that the Eagles have a very, very, very quality backup who could be a starter for a lot of teams there at the left tackle position in case anything, knock on wood, but in case anything does happen to Big Jordan again. But yeah, it's obviously great to have Jordan back. He was playing fantastic, I feel like, in the beginning of the season. Hopefully he'll be able to be good to go tonight in terms of being 100%, which I think obviously he would be if he's playing, but obviously it's going to take a little bit for him to get into the game. But yeah, the Eagles offensive line has done a great job this whole season, running, passing, all assets of the game, and it's always great to get Jordan back, and hopefully we can keep this offensive line together the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, once again, this Fred Johnson and how great the Eagles backup offensive linemen always have been. It's another shout out for the great Jeff Stoutland, always having his guys, whether it's Lane Johnson or it's me, ready to go out there for every single game. If you're like me, that's never going to see an NFL field or sniff one, he's going to have you ready like you're the star offensive lineman like Lane Johnson. It's the same workouts, the same thing for all of them, and that's what makes Stoutland so great.
Yeah, I mean, he turned Jordan Mailata, who was a 7th-round rugby player, never even touched a football before in his life, to a Pro Bowl level left tackle, and obviously a guy who just got a contract extension with the Eagles. I mean, there wasn't many things that Chip Kelly did positively here, but the one thing he did do, or one of the two things he did, or one of the few things he did do, is bring in Jeff Allen. I mean, he can never leave. He can't leave. He's just been fantastic. If I'm an offensive lineman, doesn't matter what round I get drafted in, and I get drafted to the Philadelphia Eagles, I am ecstatic because I know at the very least I am going to be coached by one of the greats in the game. And yeah, I mean, it is, you hear it all the time of Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata. You go back to Brandon Brooks and just all these guys who have come in here, and just no matter who the Eagles bring in, it seems like they turn into a Pro Bowl type player. I mean, they have Mekhi Becton, who is a top 10 pick as a left tackle, was so bad in New York that the Jets got rid of him as a top 10 pick, and he's playing right guard, and he's been fantastic. Like, it is just, he's the best in business. There's no other way to say it. And yeah, it's just a real testament to how good of a coach he is. And I think something to his stat that goes underrated is he's the running game coordinator. Obviously the Eagles have Saquon Barkley, but over the past couple of years, they've just been able to plug guys in, get 1,000-yard rushers out of DeAndre Swift, out of Miles Sanders, and Saquon Barkley will go over that 1,000-yard mark tonight, which is absolutely insane. But he's just an amazing coach, and the Eagles are so lucky to have him.
Game number 10 of the season, and Saquon Barkley is going to surpass 1,000 yards. He was kind of a silent assassin last week. He didn't do anything crazy, anything big, or exclamation, and like he has been all season. But I mean, last week he was extremely effective, kind of quietly.
Yeah, I mean, I think he set the tone for that game with that first down run he had after the Eagles turnover that led to the Jalen touchdown. When you catch the ball six yards behind the line of scrimmage, and you just basically run through two guys, hit a spin move on them, get the first down. I mean, he is just obviously we've talked about it so much so far this season, but he's an amazing player. I mean, he put so much fear into the defense that as soon as he caught the ball, instead of going to swarm him, the Cowboys defenders started backing up because they were afraid of what Saquon Barkley was going to do to them. I mean, he has been the Eagles MVP so far this season, and yeah, I'm excited to see what he's going to do tonight.
It's like the one big kid in Pee Wee ball. You give him the ball, and everyone is running the opposite way. Everyone's running for that ice cream truck. It's like the horrifying experience, and that's what Saquon brings. And someone else that's been bringing that, now flipping over to the defensive side of the ball, he hasn't been such a silent assassin all season. It's Zach Bond. He was the NFC Defensive Player of the Week last week. He had 8 tackles, 2 forced fumble, and a fumble recovery against Dallas. And it seems like the guy is involved in every single play. You look to your left, he's there. You look to the right, he's there. I think he's like standing in front of me right now. He is everywhere, Zach Bond.
Yeah, he has. That's funny. He has been amazing. I mean, it's such an amazing job by Howie Roseman and Vic Fangio. I mean, this is a guy who was coming out of college, he was looked at as a pretty good linebacker, but he was kind of used as an edge rusher in the Saints, never really got his footing. And then Howie and Vic, they noticed the talent that was being underutilized, and they've changed positions for him. They made him a stand-up linebacker, and he's been the second best linebacker in football this season. I mean, there was somebody, I apologize because I don't remember who said this, but somebody said him and Fred Warner are currently the 2 best linebackers in football. I mean, that is just insane for a guy on a 1-year deal who wasn't even playing stand-up linebacker last year. He has just been amazing. Like you said, he's a playmaker. I mean, he had an interception the week before. He's forcing fumbles. I think he's really just starting to understand this defense and understand that position, the new position he's in. I mean, the Eagles signed Devin White this offseason, who was an all-pro Super Bowl champ. And these two guys have beat him out, and he's on Houston now, and, no one's missing him. And it's just, he's been absolutely amazing. I think one day we're just going to wake up and we're going to check our phones and he's going to be extended. I hope, because TJ Edwards wasn't extended and he's been very good in Chicago, and I hope we don't make that mistake again. But it was just an amazing job by Howie and Vic Fangio to notice a talent and a player that was being underutilized, and then to be able to move him to a new position and to have him playing at such a high level this early on into that new position. It's amazing. And he talked about a couple of weeks ago about how he transferred high schools in high school, and he didn't really feel like he fit in at the first school, and then at the next school he fit in. He was able to thrive and get a college scholarship for football and all this stuff, and how he kind of contributes the same thing to the Eagles and their culture. And obviously that's a great thing about Nick Sirianni as the culture setter of the team, and also the guys on that defense as well, that they've accepted him. And he's been absolutely amazing, and it's exciting to see how he's going to continue this season, and hopefully seasons to come as an Eagle.
Yeah, he's on a 1 year, $1 million deal. Like him and Whit Merrifield got the same contract by Philadelphia teams in their offseason. Like, that just kind of puts it in perspective. Whit Merrifield lasted half the year, was horrible in Philadelphia, and then badmouthed the Phillies organization. So,
Well, it's crazy. So I saw this TikTok today. I should have sent it to you when we were talking about Zach Bond, but it was a NFL. It was just kind of like a Jalen Hurts edit on TikTok, and it was all the people who hated the draft pick coming out of college, and then how he turned himself into obviously a very good NFL quarterback. And one of the analysts said on the night of the draft, "You have Zach Bond sitting on the board, and you take a quarterback, and whoever that guy is, I want you to know we got both of them now, so it's all good."
It is all good. And I mean, like what are the Eagles waiting for at this point to give that guy an extension? His PFF grades over the past 3 weeks have been 91.3, 92.6, and 90.9. Like, he is ranked first in linebackers the last 3 weeks. What are we waiting for?
Yeah, so I know that there are dates that open up extensions. So I'm not sure if that date is opened up yet. I know it's sometime around this time of the year, but there are certain limitations on when you can extend a player. So they may just be waiting for that window to open up. I'm not exactly sure what that date is, but I think it should be coming up here soon. So maybe that's it. If it has already opened up, then I think they are just trying to see how the season plays out. They did this last year with some guys. They did this with TJ Edwards, and unfortunately TJ left, and he's been a great player for Chicago. Hopefully it's not the same fate as Zach, but we've seen how he extend players in November, December before. So hopefully it's just that the window hasn't been opened.
Yeah, I tried to look it up. Google didn't really help me in the short time I had, but I'll try and work on it. And we'll get you an answer next week. And you look at the whole Eagles defense. Their last 5 games, the Eagles are on a 5-game winning streak, by the way. I don't think we've mentioned that yet.
Crazy.
In the last 5, they've allowed 10 points, 201 yards per game, 126 passing yards, and 4 touchdowns. This defense is featuring 2 first-round picks and a bunch of other young guys. First-round picks of the last 2 years that kind of make up the front. And then, of course, your secondary with Quinyon and Cooper DeJean. And this is one of the youngest defenses in the NFL. Is this the best defense in the NFL?
Yeah, so statistically, they're the second best defense in the NFL. If you just go by defensive rankings, they are number 2. I think you have to look at context just a little bit here when you're looking at how good this defense is, of who they've played over this 5-week stretch. Deshaun Watson, Cooper Rush, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, obviously Joe Burrow, and they shut him down. So that's a major feather in their cap. They beat Jordan Love. They played well against Kirk Cousins. They had the one bad game against Tampa, but for the majority of the season, except for that Tampa game, they have been really good. I would like to see I think this next stretch is really going to tell us whether this defense is legit or not. Jaden Daniels, Matthew Stafford, and Lamar Jackson are no pieces of cake. And I think that after these three games coming up here, this 3-game stretch, we'll be able to really know who this defense is. But in terms of how they're playing right now, I mean, there's some numbers, even if they are playing bad quarterbacks, you just can't ignore. 10 points a game, 4 touchdowns over 5 games. It's just insane. They've had so many times where they bailed this offense out. I talked about it a little bit when I talked about Jalen, but, he turned the ball over last week. That fumble, they don't even allow a touchdown. Against the Green Bay Packers going all the way back to week 1, they keep them in that game. They have just done an amazing job so far this season. And yeah, I mean, they got so much young talent. It's crazy. Just 2 years ago, you look back at this defense and we're saying there's no young talent. Where's this defense going to go? All these kinds of things. And then now you look at it, you got Jalen Carter, you got Nakobe Dean, you got Quinyon, you got Coop. You got the only thing that they're really missing is that stud young edge rusher, which I think they're going to try to get either in a trade this offseason or in the draft. But I mean, they have so much talent on that side of the ball. Even you look at the cornerback depth, obviously Coop and Quinyon have been amazing, but you look past them, you got Keely Ringo, who's come in and played well. You got Isaiah Rodgers, who's come in and played well. You got Eli Ricks, who's deactivated every week, who has played well in the NFL. So it's just an amazing turnaround by Howie Roseman over these last 2 years of getting young defensive talent in here. And yeah, I mean, it's really exciting to see where they're going to go for the future because we finally got some studs. And I like how they're all going to grow up together. All these guys are around the same age, drafted around the same time. They're all going to grow up together. You already see Quinyon and Coop taking pictures together, modeling for starter jackets, and Reed and Coop, like you said, wearing the matching T-shirts coming into the game. And I think they're all really starting to gel, and it's going to be really fun to watch over the next few years. We finally got some young defensive talent in here.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see, and it's all under the leadership of one guy who maybe playing in his last huge game in the regular season at Lincoln Financial Field, Brandon Graham. I mean, he's been with this Eagles team forever, and we're going to get into a guy who was an Eagle forever very soon. BG's been here forever. He knows the culture, and he's a great leader. And he is I don't know, but I know he is showing these younger guys, just kind of leading them and being their captain.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at Darius Slay as well. Darius Slay is kind of a hot button player in Philadelphia, but one thing that I've loved from him this season is that he has taken Quinyon Mitchell under his wing. I mean, even little things like you look at the video the Eagles put out of the mind reader guy who came to the facility, and Darius Slay went first, and then he had him pick his next guy, and he went straight to Quinyon Mitchell. He talked about Slay has talked about how that's his little guy and that's his buddy and all this stuff all off season long, and about how he's taking him under his wing. Slay knows his time here in Philadelphia might not even pass this year with how good Quinyon's been. So I really love that from him, and I really obviously love it from Brandon. He's out there talking to these guys. He's taking them under their wing. There's no doubt about that. And it's going to be weird when these guys have moved on, but I think that their legacy and their wisdom will be passed on to this younger generation for sure.
It sure is. And of course, you still have Jason Kelsey, who's allegedly in the building like every day, who's, definitely helping out as well. Let's talk about an Eagles legend that's returning to Lincoln Financial Field for the first time as a player tonight. Zach Ertz, legendary tight end, maybe the best tight end in Eagles history. 9 years as an Eagle, 7,815 receiving yards, 47 touchdowns. Of course, had the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 52. And Sam, you met him?
Yeah, so this is actually crazy. So Zach is my favorite Eagle of the Super Bowl era. Ever since he was really drafted here, I always loved him. I loved, just how much he accepted us and kind of put himself into us as a fan base. And he always has talked about it, and he's talked about it now, about how Philly is and always will be home. And then obviously he just was such a great player here. And I just always loved him. And, I was out getting breakfast one day at my hometown, and this is about 2 months after the Super Bowl, actually. So right after they won the Super Bowl, and he was in there, and he was nice enough to talk to me for about 5 minutes and take a picture. And I just told him, how I loved him and how much of a big fan I was. And during that Super Bowl run, I wore his jersey every single week, and I told him that, and he was, he loved that, and he was just such a nice guy to meet and such a nice guy to talk to. And everything you hear about him is just how much of an incredible guy he is, on and off the field. And he's obviously an Eagles Hall of Famer. I'm super excited to see him back. Obviously, like we talked about, the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl, it doesn't get much better than that. And he was a great player while he was here. Unfortunately, he, left here and with that trade, and I would love to see him come back and retire as an Eagle, which I'm sure he will. But he's playing some pretty good football right now too, which is good for him. And yeah, I'm excited to have Zach back. Like I said, my favorite player for a very, very long time, and it's always good to see him back here.
Yeah, Ertz definitely also up there in my definitely top 5 favorite Eagles that I was able to watch. How old were you in this picture?
So I was 18. That was my senior year of high school. We were out just literally at the local coffee shop downtown, and there's a lot of Philly athletes who live in my hometown, and Carson, obviously Zach and Carson were very close, and they would go and work out with a guy in town, and they just came in there to get something to eat afterwards. Carson wasn't with him, but Zach was there, and that was right after the Super Bowl. I think that was about April of that Super Bowl, right after that Super Bowl in 2018. So obviously the biggest time. And after I posted that picture on my Instagram story, I got about 50 messages. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? But I think I was the only one that was able to meet him that day, and he was fantastic to me and so nice. And yeah, it was awesome. Him being my favorite player at the time, and then turning around and seeing him there was a wild experience.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been anywhere and just was like, yo, there's whoever. I've waited outside of minor league games. I've met Alec Bowman, a couple other Phillies, because like outside Trenton Thunder games and stuff, but never really saw one like just out. So I'm sure it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to have a few of those experiences with some guys like McNabb, Ertz, Roy Halladay, where I'm just kind of Golden Tate randomly. Yeah, it was like right after he got traded to the Eagles too. I was in Nordstrom Rack, and I turned around and Golden Tate standing there, and I was the only one who even knew who he was, because obviously we're Eagles psychos. And it was literally 2 days after he got traded there, and I talked to him for like 5 minutes. He was really nice too. But yeah, I've been lucky enough to just randomly run into a bunch of athletes, and then with my current job now, I've met a ton of athletes, which is very cool. So, but yeah, Ertz is definitely one of the best.
Yeah, and he's been pretty solid, as you said, this season. Still rocking that Eagles bracelet. 381 yards on 37 receptions and 1 touchdown. I mean, first get back at Lincoln Financial Field. The guy could be a problem tonight. How are you going up against Zach Ertz tonight?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely could be a problem. I think Zach Ertz, anytime touchdown, obviously we don't want to bet on anyone scoring against the Eagles, but it seems we always talk about, when Saquon goes back, or when AJ went back, or all these kind of things that these teams that the Eagles try to get them touchdowns. And I'm sure Washington's going to try to do their best to get Zach a touchdown in Philly. But I mean, Nakobe Dean, we all love how well he's played so far this season. But the one thing that he does struggle with, at least struggled with early in the season, he has gotten better at it. But what he did struggle with early in the season was pass defense, kind of being matched up against that tight end, obviously with his size. You saw in that picture, Zach Ertz is a pretty big dude, and obviously is a fantastic route runner, as we all know. So that could give Nakobe fits a little bit tonight. But also, like I said, Nakobe's gotten a lot better in coverage. He obviously had that amazing catch in the interception to win the game against Jacksonville. So hopefully Nakobe can hold his own, but I do think that they're going to be forcing Zach the ball a little bit when they're getting close to the end zone here.
Yeah, man, I don't know. You're lining up pretty close up there with Ertz.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a tall guy. Zach's a tall guy, so I was surprised that I was just about as tall as him. Everyone I sent that picture around to my friends this morning, and they were like, "Oh, so why weren't you a tight end?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know. Good question."
Yeah, it sounded like you played basketball though. Is kind of how it sounded when you were taking the tip and stuff.
Oh yeah. Wearing that picture, I'm wearing my shirt from the Tournament of Champions from the New Jersey State basketball. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Another Super Bowl winning Eagle returns to Lincoln Financial Field tonight, not to play, but to officially retire as an Eagle. Vinny Curry is retiring as an Eagle tonight. Was great on that defensive line for the Eagles that season. He's grew up an Eagles fan and stuff, so pretty cool he's coming back to retire tonight on such a big night. He'll be the honorary captain as well.
Yeah, super cool. Like you said, grew up an Eagles fan, getting to play for his hometown team. Obviously, winning a Super Bowl with his hometown team is obviously an amazing experience. They read some of his stats earlier on WIP when I was listening, and I was surprised. He obviously, we all knew he was a good player, but some of his stats that he had, he's like in the teens in terms of sacks all time as an Eagle and all that kind of stuff. So definitely an underrated Eagle. But yeah, good for him for retiring as an Eagle, and I'm sure he'll get a loud cheer as he gets introduced tonight.
Yeah, he sure will. Also, a great all-time great name, Vinny Curry. That's a good one. If
I always loved him and Fletcher with the sack celebration.
Yeah, Fletcher
breaking down the door and stuff.
Yeah, Vinny Curry, Fletcher Cox. Yeah. That team had some good names. Zach Ertz, good football names on that team. Dan Quinn is also a good name. And the job he's done with Washington so far has been pretty great. Last year, through 10 games, the Commanders were 3-7. This year, they've completely flipped that around, and they're now 7-3 through 10 games. Can you kind of break down and review the job that Dan Quinn has done so far for the Commanders?
Yeah, I mean, he's done a great job. He's a defensive-minded head coach, so obviously you're going to look to their defense first, and their passing defense is 5th ranked in the league. Their running defense is very low, down all the way at 28th, so obviously that's a problem. But Washington is ahead of schedule. Anytime you're ahead of schedule, there's going to be holes on your team because you didn't expect to be this good this year. So I think they'll try to get that figured out next season. But yeah, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury and Brian Johnson, our old friend Brian Johnson, are getting a lot of credit, and rightfully so, for this offense and Jaden Daniels because they do run the offense. But like Nick Sirianni, when the team plays well and the team is doing well, you got to give credit to the head coach because he's the guy who puts his stamp of approval on everything, and he's the guy that's going to get all the negative backlash if it doesn't do well. So I do think it was a good hire by them with Dan Quinn. And I think he'll get this defense turned around. Obviously, like I said, he's a defensive-minded guy. They need a little bit more talent in there. They lost Chase Young. They traded away Montez Sweat. They need to kind of replace some of those guys in there. Jonathan Allen's been hurt just about all season. So they need to replace some of those guys on the defensive line. But, there's not a lot you can say besides he's done a great job.
He sure has. All right, let's move into our notable matchups. We're about 20 minutes away from kickoff at the link. We got some good defensive guys against some good Washington running backs, and we'll see how this Eagles defense goes at the Commanders tonight. What are your notable matchups?
Yeah, so I got two big ones for you. I got the first one is Jordan Davis with defensive tackles versus Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. A lot like the Eagles, the Washington Commanders love to run the football, and with Brian Robinson Jr. coming back tonight, they're definitely going to want to use him a lot. And Eckler had a really good game when Robinson was out, so they got a really good two-headed monster there. Jaden Daniels obviously has been amazing so far, but a lot like the Eagles, they kind of limit how many times he throws the ball. They like to run the ball a ton. So the Eagles need to stop the run, and I think this is Jaden Daniels' first big-time game in the NFL, and first one where it has huge stakes. Obviously he played at the biggest stage at LSU, won a Heisman Trophy, but he's still a rookie. Let's see what he can do against us, but I think we need to kind of do a really good job against the run because they want to run the football. And then the next one's Vic Fangio versus Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has done it, like I said, we talked about a lot. He's been amazing this season, but he is still a rookie. Vic Fangio needs to find ways to get pressure on him, find ways to get his guys to the quarterback while also keeping contained. You cannot let Jaden Daniels run all over you, or else it's going to be a long night for the defense. Big thing that has been talked about is that Jaden Daniels is a big simulation guy. He loves watching simulations of defenses and all that kind of stuff to get mental reps. You got to disguise your looks. He's ahead of the curve in terms of reading a defense. You got to show him one thing pre-snap, have another thing for him post-snap. So I think this is a big Fangio game, and he's been doing a great job so far this season. So hopefully he can keep that going.
He's watching simulations. What's he watching? Those old YouTube videos of guys remaking a team on 2K or Madden and simming the season. You know what videos I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Those are good videos, man. I don't blame him for watching those either. All right. Something that I know everyone is watching are prices for events. Eagles games, especially tonight, was probably a hot ticket. Save some money with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the easiest and most efficient way to buy your tickets. Each seat is given a green, red, or yellow dot, indicating whether purchasing that ticket, I can't speak tonight, would be a good, bad, or fair deal. By using code Philly Sports Report, you can save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Again, PHILLYSPORTSREPORT. To save $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase, link is in the description or the bio to save. SeatGeek, send out stars tonight. Sam, what are we thinking?
So I got two for you. My first one's going to be Saquon Barkley. It's kind of a cop-out to go Saquon, but he's been a standout star all season long, and I think that continues today. The Washington Commanders are 5th in the NFL against the pass, while just 28th against the run. Give it to Saquon early and often and watch him do his thing. My second one is going to be Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, he has just been everything you could have asked for in a first-round corner, especially as a rookie. He has been amazing. The Washington Commanders line Terry McLaurin up on his side of the field over 70% of the snaps. So Quinyon is going to have a tough test tonight, but he's had a tough test just about all season long with guys like Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, and he has done an amazing job against them all this season. I think if Quinyon is able to lock up Terry McLaurin, then the Eagles going to have a very successful night. Real quick on Terry McLaurin. So talking about meeting athletes, I met him over the off season. He came and golfed at my job. He was very nice to talk to. I did tell him I was an Eagles fan, and he did tell me that they were coming for us this year because Jaden Daniels is a stud. So he was right on that so far, but hopefully we can get the better of them tonight. So those are my two standout stars.
There you go. This guy's meeting everybody out there on the golf course. All right, Gamblers R Us, locks to the game. Goes to the Gamblers R Us podcast on all Philly Sports Reports networks, on YouTube, on all podcasting sites. Go watch and listen. Late movement on the line. Just went back and checked. Eagles are -4 tonight. It was 3.5. Just got bumped up another half a point. The over/under remains 49.5. What are your locks tonight?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. The Eagles, their last 6 games at home are 0-6 with the spread. Doesn't mean they're 0-6, obviously, in terms of money line winning the game, but they're 0-6 against the spread. I think that trend bucks tonight. I like the Eagles with the points. Eagles money line as well. We'll get into our score predictions later, but I like that. Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown. You're not betting it every week. What are you doing? A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown. We talked about how well he plays against the Commanders. Marshawn Lattimore is, not playing today. The cornerback they traded for because of A.J. Brown. They wanted him to be able to come in and stop A.J. Brown because they know he's the biggest threat in the division, and he's not playing tonight. And then A.J.'s over-under for catches is only 5.5, depending on where you look. So I think he's going to have another big game tonight, so I like him over that as well.
All right, thank you to Foco for the Foco Fit Check. Real fans at the best gets by Foco. Makes legendary gear for the most legendary fans. Click on the link in the description or bio. You can save 10% off on certain orders over at Foco, so make sure you go check them out. Looks like you're rocking some Super Bowl 52 championship merch tonight. I wonder if it's the guy that you may have met at your local coffee shop.
Yeah, this is a pretty obvious one. I talked about it all the time. Zach Ertz, my favorite Eagle of that Super Bowl run, so I had to bring out the Zach Ertz jersey today. I got the Super Bowl champions version, but while I'll obviously be rooting for him to not play well against the Eagles, I will forever love Zach Ertz for what he did in Philadelphia, and he's forever in Eagles history with his diving touchdown to win the Super Bowl. So had to bring it out tonight for Zach.
got the catch, tripped over a guy, dove in, ball pops out, comes back down with it. I mean, that game was crazy, but that was one of the craziest plays and the craziest moments I think I've ever seen.
Well, and what's even more underrated and crazy is that drive, 4th and 1, Eagles got to get it. They drop back the pass. They throw it to Zach Ertz. He looks like he's going to be short. He reaches the ball over the first down line, keeps the chains moving, keeps that drive alive, obviously leads to the game-winning touchdown. I mean, that play is just about as underrated as a play in the Eagles Super Bowl win as there is. But, man, he was just, those years back then, he had over 100 catches that one season. He was a fantastic player. And, yeah, that image of him diving across the end zone, it's one that will hang forever.
It sure is. So many crazy, probably terrible play calls by Doug Peterson in that game. The Phillies, especially if you look at it, like 4th down in the Super Bowl to end the half, you're calling a trick play to throw to your quarterback. Like, you just don't do that. 4th and 1, you're throwing the ball. Like, probably some bad play calls there, but it doesn't matter.
When you're going against the GOAT on his best day, you got to take some chances, and Doug took them all, and that's why we got this right here.
There you go. All right, keys to the game. Thank you to Foco, by the way. Keys to the game today. We kind of hinted at some of them throughout the show, but what do you got?
Yeah, so it's stuff we talked about already, but start fast. We got to start fast one of these games in terms of the offense. Obviously, the defense has started fast in just about every game, but I need this offense to get out to an early lead, score a touchdown on their first drive. Jalen, please come out of the game playing like you do in your second half. And I think we have a good shot with that. Keep Jaden Daniels in the pocket. It's just, it's not as simple as that, but at times he's just has his back-breaking runs. We know how exciting they are and how meaningful they are when Jalen does it for us. Imagine that feeling as an opposing team defense fan, watching him do it to you. That's what Jaden Daniels will do to you if you let him escape the pocket. Get pressure on him, hit him in the pocket whenever you can, make him feel those ribs. And biggest thing, just let him stay inside the pocket. Obviously, he's a very good pocket passer as well. But these mobile quarterbacks, that's when they start to beat you, when they start running all around the field.
All right. Prediction time tonight. Biggest game of the year so far for both teams. The battle for first place in the NFC East on Thursday Night Football. All right. My prediction, I was saying it to Sam. I was saying it to you earlier tonight. It's either going to be a heartbreaking loss for the Eagles or it's going to be a dominant one. I think it's not a dominant-looking score, but I do think the Eagles win this game. I think they win 28-20 is my final score. The people that took the over will be sweating.
I like it. Yeah, I think that this is the game that the Eagles come in and they stamp their mark as one of the top two teams in the NFC, up there right with Detroit and one of the best teams in the NFL. I think that they kind of give a little bit of a shock to Washington in just terms of, we're the team to beat in this NFC and we're the team to beat in this NFC East. I think the Eagles come out and they win this game 31-24.
All right, there you go. Put your predictions in the chat if you still can. Yeah, I mean, this is a statement game for both teams. If the Commanders can go out and win, it's like, oh my God, Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders are real. And if the Eagles go out and dominate, it's like, all right, the birds are back.
Yeah, I think it plays both ways, because if the Eagles come out here and they lose this game, a lot of people are going to say, well, look at who they played over this winning streak. When they're playing good teams, they're not as good as we thought, whereas it can also flip. The Eagles have not played a lot of good teams, and if they come out and they beat Washington, I'm sure everyone's going to say that Washington's actually not that good, because that's how it works when the Eagles beat you. But, it's a big game. I mean, from just so many aspects. Obviously, the Eagles have to go out to LA next week on Sunday night. That's never an easy road trip going out west. The Rams, they have a good offense. They can win some games here, and then they got Baltimore coming up. So it's a massive, massive game.
All right, so many primetime games. Rank Sunday night, Monday night, Thursday night, like in your rankings, like which you prefer to play on. I think my top is Sunday night. I think 2 is Thursday and 3 is Monday.
So I would go Sunday, Monday, Thursday. I hate Thursday night football. I just from the standpoint of the fact that both teams are playing on a short week. it just tends to be a lesser product on the field. And then you have to wait 10 days to watch your team again. I hate that. I hate that we're not going to have a game this Sunday. I hate that we have to wait all the way until next Sunday. And then on top of that, we have to wait all the way until next Sunday night to watch them again. So that's the biggest thing I hate about Thursday night football is the wait afterwards.
Yeah, I think my thing is like waking up the next day. Like after Monday night, it's Tuesday, and God forbid the Eagles lose. Like Tuesday's already the worst day of the week. You're waking up and it's Tuesday and your team just lost. Like it's terrible. You're not getting much sleep. At least tomorrow it's Friday. Like there's something.
But at the same time, you can turn the page to the next week already of the NFL season. Whereas if they lose Thursday night, you got to watch all these teams play and all these things happen, knowing that your team has already lost. Hopefully that doesn't happen, and we can just watch all these games on Sunday, knowing the Eagles have already have a win in the bag. But it also does play the other way as well.
Yeah, hopefully we can be appreciating the game today. That's going to do it for us here on the SeatGeek Eagles pregame show. Tonight's game is on Amazon Prime. It's probably on Fox in the Philadelphia area.
It's on sure. in the local areas. It's on cable. Yeah.
All right, there you go. So if you don't have Amazon, you're in luck. But you should probably get Amazon so you can watch all the Thursday night games anyway. All right. Eagles pregame show brought to you by SeatGeek. We thank all of you for watching. We thank you to SeatGeek and Foco for sponsoring the show. The PhillySportsReports.com game summary will be published right after the game tonight. You can either wake up and read it tomorrow morning, or you can read it right after the game. So go check that out down there and follow us on all the social medias. Follow Sam and I. We are, we're everywhere. We're even on Philly Sports Reports is even on Blue Sky now, since apparently we're doing the Blue Sky thing. So go check us out over there. We're going to end you with the hype video that we started with. We'll see you Sunday night against the Rams, but big one tonight at the link. Go Birds!
Go Birds!
Guys, this is f***ing awesome. We are playing on Thursday Night Football against the team in our division that's up there with us. For everyone to f***ing see. If you don't have f***ing goosebumps and you're not ready to go, I know this room is. I cannot f***ing wait. If we would have told you this when you were 10 years old, we would have told you this at the beginning of the year. Hey, on Thursday Night Football, all the f***ing chips are on the line right here. I got goosebumps thinking about that. I cannot f***ing wait. Lock the f*** in. Laser focus so we can be at our best on Thursday night.